I'm intrigued by the R&D situation and the fact that it can be nothing to do with marketing, and yet you have research which works out whether something will work, and that can often happen clearly, abstractly in your head. You know it's going to work, and then the development is put it in a box so you can demonstrate it, and hence, dare I say, market it. So where's the cut-off? There's a big distinction between research and development. They're not R&D, they're research and development. Any comments, please?
I'll take that. We give relief for research and development. The cut-off is that you look at what the advance in science and technology is, and you can claim under our scheme for the activities which lead to achieving the advance. So if you develop something which is an advance in science and technology, and in order to market it, you then have to package it in a particular way, put it in a box, and that packaging in and of itself is not also an advance in science and technology.
It's not packaging, it's persuading. The company that we're working on, we've got an idea that we reckon could change a lot of things.
Yeah.
But people are entrenched in their methods, and so working out how to persuade is extremely difficult. But it is part of the development, and part of the research as well to find out what is
yeah.
Sorry, can I just chip in there? So Rob Barker from Deloitte. It's quite often the case that early stage work that you're doing, you're having to face these technological uncertainties, perhaps on a smaller scale, but you're having to start that work in order to resolve those difficulties. And so, I would argue that you can have some R&D at that early stage, at the point at which you start that work towards that, and it can be that you need to do that in order to demonstrate your concept for an end customer.
That's right. If you're doing a feasibility type study, that's fine.
And quite often
that's
that will
fine.
fall within. Yes.
Yeah, a feasibility study type initiative is fine, but if you're having to argue with companies for funding or for marketability, then we wouldn't that wouldn't fall into the rules.
I was going to say, just to respond, I think this brings out the extraordinarily care. The wording that is used needs to be to tick the box in an appropriate way. And there is, from my point of view, quite a lot of this. How do we actually break out where the uncertainties lie and how they relate to the technology we're using? And so the rationale within your mind isn't necessarily going to ring the bells of the
absolutely.
The
it's not going to ring the bells of our potential customers, are
Well, one thing I have to explain is that on the R&D units, we have an interest in science and technology, but we do not have, as a matter of policy, any experts in a particular field of science and technology. So a lot of the time, you need to explain to us in perhaps a simpler way what you're intending to achieve. Because we are experts on the rules, but we are not experts in any particular branch of science or technology, although some of us have a little bit of background in certain areas.
And the point is, you do need to separate the, what were the marketing objectives from what was actually difficult about the technology. So you have to build up a slightly different story as to what was difficult about the work.
Yeah, we're not trying to buy the stuff off you, so you don't need to try and convince us in the same way as a customer.
And when we started this process, Terry put together some KTPs to sort of demonstrate the sorts of things he got involved with, which were very technical and very detailed. I suppose what we moved away from that is to try to explain to Terry, that's great from an engineering perspective, but for an R&D tax credits perspective, you need something a bit more simpler, something that HMRC and accountants can understand, what the advancement is and what that's trying to be, or the technological uncertainties that's trying to be advanced for R&D tax credit purposes, and that can be vastly different to how you would present it from an engineering perspective.
And could I just chip in there in the sense of how you explain what's going on? Because within this room and within what you tell the HMRC unit, failure is a really good thing. It's about the only place in your business where failing is helpful, because it really demonstrates you've got technological uncertainty. So when you present to HMRC what you've done, please ensure that you include problems you've come across on the way, failures, things that haven't worked, because it helps them to understand why it's technologically or scientifically uncertain.
And how difficult it was. So separating the marketing stuff, which says this is all really easy and we're experts at it and genuinely, you know, we're leaders. Separating that from actually this was a really difficult thing to do. It took our engineers a long time to do it. They wouldn't have spent a lot of time on it if it hadn't been so challenging. It's a different story, you know, just to draw out that side of it for the purposes of getting this relief.
Can I chip in something as well? In our experience with these things, it's really important when you're putting a claim together that you get not just the finance people there and the management, but also the technical people, and that's where you get these interesting discussions, as have been alluded to, because quite often it's I find it quite entertaining sometimes that you're trying to get out the failures from the technical guy, who might not have been so enamoured about actually explaining those failures to the finance guy, shall we say, and the costs of those failures. But that's where it's important to get them out, because the finance guy won't know the full picture, the technical guy won't know the full cost. So you have to get your team together of people and the advisor to make sure you're not going completely down the wrong route, and get all of those people together before you really do much work at all.